3 jobs. That's what I was working when I was 22 years old. A full-time job during the day. A warehouse shift on Friday and Saturday nights. Freelance work on the side whenever I could get it. Not because I was broke. Not because I had debt. Because my parents asked me to help fund my stepbrother's Ivy League tuition. They said the family estate would cover it eventually. They said it was temporary. They said I'd be taken care of. I believe them. But I'm also someone who reads the fine print. So before I wrote the first check, I made them sign a piece of paper. A formal, legally binding promissory note. And then I made them sign another one. And another one. For 4 years, every single tuition payment came with a signed note. Dated. Notarized. Legally enforceable. They thought they were just formalities. Something to keep the son happy. What they didn't know was that I was building something. Then I found out they were rewriting the estate to give my stepbrother everything. I called my attorney the same afternoon. And the piece of paper she filed next put their house, the house I've been funding for 4 years, on a public foreclosure auction. I'm Marcus. And this is what happens when you make your kid the ATM, but forget he reads the contract. My parents, I'll call them Gary and Diane, have been married for 12 years. My stepbrother, Tyler, is Gary's biological son and Diane's stepson. I am Gary's biological son from his first marriage. I've lived with Gary and Diane since I was 10. The family dynamic, in short, Tyler was the golden child. I was the one who was expected to be responsible, practical, and grateful for having a roof over my head. I'm not going to spend 1,000 words on the childhood dynamics, because honestly this story is about what happened when I was an adult and started making decisions of my own. But you need to understand the baseline. In this family, Tyler got. I was expected to give. Tyler got into an Ivy League school when he was 18. I'll keep which one vague, but it's one of the expensive ones. Tuition plus room and board running close to 70 grand a year. Gary and Diane were beyond proud. Tyler's acceptance was treated like a family achievement, which fine, whatever. Good for him. The problem was money. Gary and Diane didn't have 70 grand a year liquid. They had a house with decent equity, some retirement accounts, and a family estate that Gary's parents had left, property and assets tied up in a trust. Not easy to access quickly. What they did have was me. I was 22, had been working since 18, had a decent income from my full-time job and some savings. And my parents came to me with a proposal. They asked if I could contribute to Tyler's tuition. Just for now, they said, and promised that every dollar I put in would be reimbursed from the family estate. They said it wasn't a gift. It was a loan. Family helping family. They'd document it properly, and I'd get every penny back when the estate was liquidated, plus they'd make sure I was taken care of in their own estate plan. I want to be honest. My gut said no. My gut said this was the same pattern I'd watched my whole life, just with bigger numbers. But they were my parents, and I wanted to believe they meant it this time. I wanted to be the kind of person who showed up for family. So I said yes, with one condition. I said I needed them to sign a promissory note for each payment. A real one, formal, specific, legally binding. Not a napkin agreement. An actual documented debt instrument. Gary laughed. He said I was being very corporate about it. Diane said it was a little hurtful that I didn't trust them. I said I trusted them completely. I just liked having things in writing. They signed. I'm going to be completely real about what the next 4 years looked like because I think people underestimate how much this actually cost me. 3 jobs. I was working my full-time gig during the week, a warehouse shift on Friday and Saturday nights, and picking up freelance design work on the side whenever I had hours to spare. I drove a car I hated for 4 years because a payment wasn't in my budget. I missed things, trips, experiences, the kind of stuff your mid-20s are supposed to include, because my disposable income was being funneled into my stepbrother's education. Every semester, before I wrote the check, I presented Gary and Diane with a promissory note for the payment amount. I had a template my attorney friend had helped me put together, proper format, interest clause, payment terms, maturity date. They'd sign it. I'd file it. I had a folder. By the time Tyler graduated, I had signed notes totaling approximately $180,000. Tyler graduated. He got a job. Life was good, apparently, for everyone except me, who was still driving that car and had $180,000 in paper promises. The call from my cousin is what blew everything open. She worked adjacent to the estate attorney who was handling Gary's family trust, and she'd overheard something in a meeting that made her call me immediately. She told me Gary and Diane had been consulting with an attorney about restructuring the estate plan to name Tyler as the sole beneficiary, leaving their primary home and the bulk of the family trust entirely to him. No mention of me. No reimbursement provision. No acknowledgement of the $180,000. I sat with that information for about 2 hours. Then I called my attorney. Not my attorney friend, an actual estate and civil litigation attorney I hired that week. I brought her the folder. All the promissory notes, dated, signed, notarized. Every payment documented. She looked at the folder for a long time. Then she looked at me and said, "Marcus, these are fully enforceable debt instruments. Your parents owe you $180,000 plus accrued interest under contract law. And I want to talk to you about something called a judgment lien. Here's the mechanics of what happened, simplified. My attorney sent a formal demand letter to Gary and Diane requiring repayment of the promissory and note total plus accrued interest, which brought the number to approximately $194,000 within 30 days. Gary called me the day he got the letter. The conversation was loud on his end. He used the word betrayal approximately 4 times. He said this wasn't what family did. He said the notes were just a formality, and I knew that. I said the notes were contracts, and he knew that. He said he'd have his attorney look at it. His attorney confirmed they were valid and enforceable. I know this because Gary's tone changed dramatically in the follow-up conversation. He went from angry to bargaining. He said they'd figure out a payment plan. He said give him some time. My attorney advised me not to accept informal promises. We had made a formal demand. The clock was running. They did not pay within 30 days. My attorney filed for a civil judgment, which was granted given the clear documentation. She then filed a judgment lien against Gary and Diane's primary home. Their paid-off house, the family home I'd grown up in, the asset with the most accessible equity. A lien means a creditor has a legal claim against the property. It means the property cannot be sold or refinanced without satisfying the debt. And if the debtor refuses to pay, the lien holder can initiate foreclosure proceedings to force a sale. Gary and Diane refused to pay. My attorney initiated foreclosure. I want to tell you, I felt some huge conflict about this. Some part of me probably did. These are my parents, and the house I'm describing is the house I grew up in, and there's a version of this that is genuinely sad. But I kept coming back to the same thing. They asked me to sacrifice my mid-20s. They made me work 3 jobs. They took $180,000 of my time and my labor and my sleep and my social life. And then they quietly moved to make sure I got nothing. They made that choice. Every step of what followed was a direct consequence of a decision they made. The foreclosure auction happened on a Thursday morning. I did not attend. Gary and Diane lost the house. Tyler, who had been living there rent-free since graduation while he got on his feet, also lost his housing. The auction proceeds satisfied the lien, cover my legal fees, and return the remaining equity to Gary and Diane, which, after everything, was a smaller number than they'd expected, but was theirs. I received what I was owed. Not $1 more, not $1 less. Exactly what they had promised, signed, notarized, and broken. Update 3 hours later. Gary has not spoken to me since the auction. Diane sent a message that said I had destroyed the family. I read it. I didn't respond. Tyler reached out once, surprisingly civil, honestly. Said he hadn't known the full picture of how his tuition had been funded. I believe him. That part isn't his fault. I told him that. We're not close, but I don't have hostility toward him specifically. Someone asked if I regret any of it. I regret that my parents were the kind of people who made any of this necessary. I do not regret a single piece of paper I put in that folder. Someone asked what advice I'd give to anyone in a similar situation. If someone asks you to contribute something significant and promises to repay you, get the signature first. Every time, before the check clears. A promise without documentation is just a story someone tells you. A signed note is a fact. Know the difference. Gary and Diane built a 4-year plan. Use Marcus. Promise him the estate. Rewrite the estate. Keep everything. It was a clean plan. It would have worked on almost anyone. What they didn't account for was a 22-year-old who said yes, and then quietly opened a folder. 1 promissory note per payment. Dated. Signed. Notarized. Filed. For 4 years. Every check Marcus wrote came with a signature they thought was just a formality. That stack of formalities put their home on a public auction block. They called it betrayal. He called it contract law. So jury, did Marcus go too far letting it reach foreclosure? Or did Gary and Diane build every single consequence themselves the moment they broke a written promise? And the question I want every person watching to carry with them. The next time someone asks you to sacrifice something significant on a verbal promise, are you going to get the signature first? Because Marcus did, and that folder was worth everything. Drop your verdict in the comments. The floor is completely yours.